Hello, this is Kirill from forexboat.com and welcome back to the course on money management. And today we're going to be talking about the core concepts of the Kelly criterion, the underlying principles, if you will. So as we've discussed, as we've agreed, we're playing this hypothetical game where on heads you win twice your bet, on tails you lose your whole bet. And as we discussed in the previous tutorial, order doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in what sequence our heads and tails come in the long run. We can always group them into pairs, and moreover, we can just analyze one pair of heads and tails to understand the full outcome of this long run sequence of heads and tails. Because we know that since we've broken it up into pairs, whatever the result is of one pair of heads and tails, we can just replicate it. Well, in the long run, it will just replicate itself, and through multiplication, that result will multiply many times, and therefore we will know what the outcome will be in the long run just by knowing what the outcome is in one pair of heads and tails. So let's look at a couple of scenarios. Once again, we're starting off with a $100 balance, and we've already looked at a scenario where we bet 10%, and in that case, our balance after one pair of heads and tails goes up to $108, which is great. Now let's look at the next scenario. If we bet 25%, then on heads, our balance is multiplied by 1.5 because we win double of what we bet. On tails, our balance is multiplied by 0.75 because we will lose our 25%. And that gives us an overall result of $112.50 after one pair of heads and tails. Now if we keep going and we look at a scenario where we bet 50% of our balance, then on heads our balance is multiplied by 2, and on tails our balance is multiplied by 0.5. And as a result, the overall outcome of a pair of heads and tails is we're back at $100. So after the heads we would go to $200, after the tails we would go back to $100. And one more scenario, the one we've also already looked at, if we bet 75%, then overall our result after a pair of heads and tails is $62.50. So it's below our starting balance. So to start off with, 4 scenarios is sufficient. Let's plot these scenarios on a chart. And the chart we're going to use is the balance over time chart. So we want to see how our balance will change over time. And once again, we're going to use that concept that we discussed, that once we know the result for one pair of heads and tails, all that will happen in the long run is it will just get replicated over and over and over again, and that's the way our account balance will go. So we're starting off with $100, and the first scenario we're going to plot is our 10% scenario. So every time we're going to bet 10% of our balance, and after every pair of heads and tails, we're going to increase our balance slightly. So it'll be $100, then $108, it'll be more and more and more and more. So it will go up, which is good. The next scenario is where we bet 25%. With 25%, our account balance is going up higher every time. So in this case, it's going up by 12.5% every time. So as you can imagine, it's also going up in the long run, but it's going up faster. So it's a more profitable scenario for us. The next scenario is where we bet 50%. And if we bet 50%, our account balance doesn't change. Every time it goes up, after every heads and tails, it goes up by 0%. So in the long run, if you always bet 50% of what you have in this particular game, then your balance won't change. And if you bet 75%, as we discussed, your balance will decline, and it will decline quite rapidly. Every time you're going to be losing approximately 37.5% of your current balance. So that's the red line on our chart. As you can see, we're playing the same game. So imagine it that 4 people are playing this game, and they have different approaches. One bets 10%, one bets 25%, one always bets 50%, and one bets 25%. Even by playing the game, so in Forex terms, think of it as they all have the same trading strategy, exactly the same trading strategy, where, for instance, your stop loss is, or your take profit is twice the size of your stop loss, and your take profit and stop loss come around with approximately the same frequency. So half of your trades are profitable, half are losses. So that's a great trading strategy. But these 4 people are playing it or using that trading strategy with different approaches to their money management. And as you can see, all 4 of them have different outcomes in the long run. And this, once again, I'd like to stress that this is the power of money management. Somebody is really taking advantage of this opportunity, and somebody not so much. Somebody's breaking even, somebody is losing all their money. And now we're going to just generalize this chart. You have 4 types of outcomes, and this is going to be always the case. So when we're going to analyze Kelly Criterion and the money management principles, you will see that there's always 4 different types of possible outcomes. There's the optimal outcome. There's one specific percentage of your account balance that if you bet that on every single coin toss or trade, if you're trading the Forex market, there's one specific percentage that will always lead to an optimal outcome. Then there's lots of different percentages that lead to a suboptimal outcome. You're still winning, you're still making money, but it's not you're not making the most out of this opportunity. Then there's a third type where you're breaking even, so you're kind of like, you're not winning but you're not losing, so it is a great trading strategy, but you somehow manage to not make money out of it, so you're breaking even with your original balance. And finally, there's another whole series of outcomes where you will ruin your balance. So there's many of them. You can bet many different percentages will lead to that, and they'll just ruin your balance. To reiterate, there's only one optimal point. There's only one break-even point. There's a lot of suboptimal ones, and there's a lot of points that will lead to ruin. Alright, so that's all for today. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, happy trading.